I'm going to insert a warning for graphic content. I'm going to talk about a suicide attempt. I'm going to talk about having your stomach pumped. I'm going to talk about going into mental health hospital, and I'm going to talk about traumatic experiences. So if you're triggered by any of those things, don't watch any further. Hi guys, so it's been a while since I last did a vlog, and that's because a lot of stuff has happened, which I'm going to explain. So last week I decided that it was time for me to look for a job, and because I was looking for a job, that meant that I was eligible for ARCASA, if you remember. The stress of ARCASA was going to be too much, and I didn't want to get too stressed out because I know what can happen, but Lars insisted that we continued with ARCASA because I was eligible for it, so I should just be able to get it. What are you doing? No! On Tuesday last week, I went to Arbetsförmedlingen because I decided that it was time to get a job, and Arbetsförmedlingen told me some seriously wrong information, which was that I needed to fill out get a doctor's note explaining my diseases so that they could help me better. And they also wanted a list of my medication, and they wanted me to write down every time that I had contact with my health service. And I was like, this is not okay. So I walked out, and the lady was just like, yep, we're done, thanks, bye. So I walked out and I ranted to my friend Camilla about it because I thought it was ridiculous that they wanted all this information. So Lars and I called ARCASA, and ARCASA were like, yeah, we don't need to know all that. So I don't know where Arbetsförmedlingen had got it from. So they told me how to fill out my time report and everything else like that, and I started to look for jobs. On Wednesday, I applied for a job as an airport officer, so one of those people that handles baggage, helps passengers on and off planes, that kind of thing. I applied for that, and on Thursday I had to do an online test that was like, am I psychologically capable of being an airport officer? Am I the kind of person that they want to hire? And there was also a math test included. And now, if any of you guys know me that well, I am not good at math, like any kind of beyond something plus something equals something, like even that can sometimes be hard for me. The numbers just swap places and I can't figure out what's what, and so I completely failed the math test, and Lars was sitting next to me thinking, wow, this is bad. So I completely failed the math test, so I didn't get that job. And then on Friday I saw another couple of jobs I wanted to apply for, and I asked for Lars's help, and Lars was like, nah. And I got really stressed out, and I was getting really depressed because of the result from the online test that I did for Swedavia, and it all just piled on top of me, and I lost control. I got delusional that killing myself would be the best thing to do, so I decided that I would sleep on it. But to make sure that I slept, I took extra medication, and just as we were going to bed, I told Lars that I'd done this, and he said, no, you've got to we're calling an ambulance. So an ambulance got called. I was put in the ambulance. They took me to hospital. I'm trying to tell a story. So I was wheeled into the resus room, and they gave me some medication to stabilize my blood pressure, my heart rate, and they hooked me up to one of these big monitors like this, and they were watching my heart rate and my blood pressure and my respiration, and they pumped my stomach. Now, if any of you guys have had your stomach pumped, you know what it's like. For those of you that haven't, do not do anything that would give you a chance of getting your stomach pumped. It is so intensely unpleasant. It's basically like they get you to throw up by mechanically forcing a tube down your stomach and then filling it with water to make you puke. So they pumped my stomach, and then they gave me a whole bunch of activated charcoal, and then I was taken to heart intensive ward, where overnight they kept waking me up to take my blood pressure. And I had an IV drip of saline, like 4 litres I think, and my blood pressure was still really, really low. So after my blood pressure stabilised in the heart ward at about 12 o'clock on Saturday, they moved me to site, where I stayed there for a couple of days, and then I came home because the delusion had passed, and I feel okay. I mean, I'm kind of ready to go get on with what it is that I need to go and get on with. I now realise that Arbetsförmedlingen and ARCASA are way too stressful for me, so I'm not doing that. I'm going to go back to komvux, which is like adult school, and I'm going to learn my Swedish, and I'm going to get my high school grades, and I'm going to go and do psychology, because that's what I really want to do. I don't want some temporary job selling shoes or whatever. I want to go and do psychology, so I'm going to go do it. So yeah, I got discharged yesterday, and then Lars and I went to go and talk to komvux, and they said, yes, absolutely, we have a a day course or we can do a distance course. And I said a day course would be great because that means I've got an excuse to get out of bed. They said, I'll see, we've got plenty of places left. It started today. We have a place left, you can have it. You just need to prove that you've passed your classes. It started today, but you can join it on Wednesday. And here's the information of where you need to go. You just need to prove that you passed your Swedish courses at the university, which I did. And then I sent them my studieintyg, which is like a list of my results from the exams that I took. And I got accepted into the course. And so tomorrow I'm going to start with Swedish class, which is going to be fun. I'm really excited, and I've been a little bit sad today because the reality of everything has kind of started to sink in now that I've had a day to myself. It was really scary. The whole ordeal with the ambulance and everything was really, really scary, and I'm not going to do that again. I just, no. So yeah, I'm home now. I got home yesterday, scared the crap out of everybody, but I'm alive. Larshy's gonna come on a bit later and explain his experiences with the whole thing. That's all I got for now. I'll talk to you later.
I came down from the dog walk about 10 o'clock. We'd been quite far away. Yes, pig, we did. I came home, sat down to just calm down a bit. I guess it was a bit of a intense walk. And then I went to brush my teeth and got to bed. Pretty much as I shut the light, Josie said that if I don't wake up now, I want you to know that I love you. And at that moment the lights came back on. Asked what she'd done, and she said that she's taken Inderall. I think she said about 10. I googled the medication to see what the consequences are of an overdose. You need to call the emergency services to get an assessment on how bad the situation is. Josie didn't want to. She said something along the lines of, no, that's not necessary, or something like that. I just want to sleep. I sat there staring at the numbers. I'd even pressed like 112 and then like deleted it. Pressed 11 again, looked at Josie and like, but I'm gonna do it. I am calling the services now. And she basically sighed at me, and then I called. I was on the line with a lovely chap saying, so what has happened? They have this phrase, emergency services, what has happened, but in Swedish. And I explained that I'm with my wife and she's taken an overdose of sleeping pill. They immediately asked, in which commune are you living? I said, Umeå. And they essentially said, the ambulance is on the way. And what has she taken? How much? Will she be aggressive if the ambulance crew come? To which you said,
No, I would just be embarrassed.
No, I wouldn't be aggressive, but I would be embarrassed. At this point, he said that the ambulance unfortunately wasn't available close to where we were, so they had a bit of a drive to do. It could be half an hour. He asked if I could check the skin color of Josie. She turning blue. She wasn't, thankfully. He asked if there was a risk that she would take any more. To which I said, I can make sure that she doesn't. And he said the ambulance is coming from Vännäs, which is about something like 30, 40 kilometers from here. But they've got their blues on, so they'll be here soon. Then he said, immediately call back to the same number, to the 112, if situation changed, if she for some reason stopped breathing or otherwise got uncautious. That didn't happen, so I didn't need to do that. And we packed a bag for Josie because we knew that she was going to be around for a couple of days at hospital, so we might as well have some basic stuff with her. We've done this before. You get used to everything. And we walked around the apartment, told the housemate what was happening, and all of a sudden there was just an ambulance outside the door. The dogs heard it, barked a bit, greeted the ambulance crew at the door. And at this point, I was calm all the time, something you learn. But at this point, I was just like, yep, now the professionals are at it, I can just step back. They pulled the recliner down from the ambulance, and Josie sat up. And at this point, our neighbor came around and asked, like, hey, what's going on? Is she all right? And I just said, she doesn't feel very well. Doesn't need more information than that. The ambulance crew asked if I was coming with them, and I said yes, but in our own car, because I kind of want to go home as well. And I sat in the car, reenacting a thing that happened about 4 years ago from reverse.
I haven't told that story yet.
I know. So that's a cliffhanger. Da, da, da. I sat up in the car and I was surprised how slowly they set off. It was just like, what? Wait, you're not serious? But then I remembered one of the drivers had actually said that we're going to start with assessing the situation and then we're going to decide what to do. We'll take it easy from here. So I could actually keep up with them for maybe the first 500 meters or so, and then they started gaining. They didn't put their blues on, but they were doing quite a lot over the speed limit anyway. Parked up at my job, much easier. Parking already sorted. Walked slowly to the emergency services, the A&E room. Introduced myself to the staff there, and they told me to sit down. And I waited for what felt like maybe 10 minutes. That's when the nurses came to get me, and they brought me into this emergency room, like behind the scenes. Don't think I've ever been in such a room cautious, or at least like old enough to understand what's happening or anything like that. It was an interesting experience. The organization, the professionalism of the nurses and the doctors. I sat down in a chair and watched them work. They're pretty good at that. They know exactly what they're doing. There was a doctor handing out orders to the nurses. The nurses they repeated back the instructions to make sure that they got them right. They started making plans for what's happening in like half an hour, like preparing like active coal to have after the belly's been pumped out of all other stuff. Very impressive. I suppose when you do that all the time, you learn teamwork and the procedures on what to do when people overdose. So they had this heart rate, ECG, respiratory, all manner of things connected, so they could check the vitals all the time. And they were a bit worried about the low blood pressure and very low pulse. Pulse was down to, the lowest I saw it was like 65, quite low for Josie. Blood pressure was quite low as well, even though she has pretty low blood pressures to begin with. And that went on for maybe an hour or so. And then they called in an experienced nurse who had done this belly pumping before. And he basically just shoved a plastic tube down the throat and started making Josie puke. That went on for maybe 20 minutes. So it must have felt much longer than that, didn't it? Mm-hmm. I've been through gastroscopy, so I kind of know what it is like. But as the nurse said, with gastroscopy they don't like shove around as much. They are, I guess, a little bit more careful because they're like taking pictures and stuff. This is just like, gotta get it done. Then we sat there for another 2 hours maybe, while the nurses came back every so often to check vitals and do readings of the blood pressure and another ECG. It had already been done. They already talked about what happens next much earlier, but now they started to actually make the plans of moving her to heart intensive care. Because now they'd been waiting for confirmation from that other department to get that rolling. But until then, they were checking her vitals there. About time to get transferred. The nurses, as soon as they were like, okay, we're ready to go now, they did a final reading of the blood pressure and it went straight back down to 60 over 50 or something. So they called the doctors back and they assessed that maybe that was just a false reading. Let's do it again. And it came back over to 100. And they were happy, and the nurse was like readily prepared for this, like maybe a couple of 100 meters walk. She had this bag with emergency supplies. She hooked up the ECG readers and all that to like a portable device rather than the big screen that they had in the room. She was prepared if the worst happens during that little couple of minute transfer. She would be able to keep Josie alive while she got help. Professionalism. It's nice to see that happen. And at this point I decided it's now right after 3 in the morning. I can't do much here anymore. The immediate danger is over. I can go home and sleep. So I went home, and as soon as my head hit the pillow, I fell asleep. That's my part of the story, as I said. you get used to everything. It might be weird to see somebody talk about serious things like this without breaking sweat. I wouldn't have about 3 years ago. I spent years going to a psychologist to prepare myself for the inevitability of these kind of things happening.
So thank you, Lars, for explaining your side of the story. I will hopefully see you guys tomorrow. That's all I got. I love you.